Mike Vigil congratulated Mexico, saying the operation sends a powerful message to the Trump administration. Vigil said the U.S. constantly threatens to send troops into Mexico and claims it doesn't do enough to fight cartels. He said the operation shows Mexico is fighting hard and effectively. The U.S. confirmed it provided intelligence support in the operation and applauded Mexico's army for taking down one of the most wanted criminals in both countries. I'm Marcela Sanchez, AP News.
This is 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. We'll see a few spotty flurries at times here for today with partly sunny skies and high into the upper 20s. Breezy winds out of the north at 10 to 20 miles per hour, gusting as high as 30. And then for tonight, mostly cloudy with a low near 19. Tuesday, mostly cloudy, breezy, high 42 degrees. And by Wednesday, plenty of blue skies and sun, a high around 35. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 21.
Menards' 11% rebate is here. From lighting to lumber, from doors to floors. The bigger the project, the bigger the rebate. From painting projects to that new kitchen makeover and designing that outdoor space of your dreams. Save big on any project you're tackling. Hurry into Menards for an 11% rebate on everything. Mail-in rebate is a merchandise credit check, not a point-of-sale discount. Redeemable on future in-store purchases only. Not on future purchases on Menards.com. See store for details.
Save big money at Menards.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that focuses on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Good Monday morning, progressives, and welcome. Yes, welcome to Fantasy Island. No, welcome to the February 23rd, 2026 edition of Choose Views. 773-763-9278 is the number. You can catch this show, obviously, on Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, and YouTube. You can email me at richard@WCPT820.com and follow me on all the socials, which include Spoutable, Threads, Substack, Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Blue Sky. Yeah, cool places to hang out. And we post stuff that you can check out and go, wow, that was pretty funny. Or, Rich is in a mood today. There you go. Catch all of our shows by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. There you can get Choose Views featured interviews, Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, Patty Vasquez driving you home, obviously, and It's the Democracy Stupid with Edwin Eisendrath. Our other great shows and interviews, Out Chicago, all that good stuff. And I hung out on a family meeting yesterday. So make sure you're checking out the family meeting as well. Over at heartlandsignal.com, which you definitely have to check out. I think, this weekend was packed with the debates and folks making the rounds and doing all their campaign stuff. And pretty much anybody that's breathing the air of AIPAC right now, certainly in some of our Illinois races, is catching a little bit of heat. So make your way over there to check out what we've got going on at Heartland Signal. Really good piece with Governor Andy Beshear talking with CNN about the ugly bill, and Illinois Representative Delia Ramirez talking with Patty about a variety of things, but particularly the Trump administration trying to strip people of color of their humanity and dignity. And we're not going to let it happen. Representative Ramirez she's something else, y'all. She is not to be messed with at all. I hope everybody had a great weekend and that you were able to get out and about and do some things maybe different than your norm. I certainly did, and it was great to. My wife and I popped in here on Saturday just to say hi. Devin wasn't around because Devin's always around. He needed a break. He needed a breather. But Devin's with us this morning, and shout out to Whitney, who's handling the intern side of the morning, and Matty B, who stuck his head in the studio, sitting in for Mike McCarter. I was like, what are you doing here, young fella? But it's good to see our team here this morning. On today's show, Dan Protess will be with us in the 6:30 hour, and we'll be talking about democracy. Dan Protess will be with us. Sarah Jones, our good friend from the Politicus and the Daily with Sarah Jones and Jason Eastley at 7 o'clock. And then from the NAACP, Abre will be here to talk about democracy, but also environmental and climate justice, which actually is part of us having a functioning democracy. So I'm looking forward to having those three experts with us this morning as we make it through the morning. Last full week of February, last full week of Black History Month. And, you know, the names are around us when we talk about Black history, the names of people who have been legendary. And we know that with the passing of Reverend Jackson last week, that there have been so many great stories about him. I shared some of my own, personal and professional and more broadly speaking, and clips for you guys. I got some funny comments. I played the one on Friday when we finished the show, Devin, of when Reverend Jackson was on Saturday Night Live reading Green Eggs and Ham. So it showed a lighter side, a humorous side of Reverend Jackson. But the cool thing about it, and you guys should play it on your own, is he was in his Reverend Jackson mode as a pastor, speaking in that sort of bravado that he has when he speaks from the pulpit or from one of his big speeches. But he was reading Green Eggs and Ham. So it just, I thought it showed the humorous side of him. And he did have a great sense of humor. I can tell you that. But as we, come to this last week of Black History Month and American History Month, as we're going to call it as well, one of the children of probably our most legendary figure when it comes to Black history, certainly the civil rights movement, is his daughter, Reverend Dr. Bernice King. So we got a clip that I'd like you guys to hear that I think everybody can benefit from. So check this out, progressives.
We should not be surprised. I want to say to everybody at the time, stop being surprised by all of this. This is all happening over. The longer we keep staying in surprise, we lose the ability to have to think in a rational way, to see through a pathway. I mean, and I know people may not understand this, but I've been saying this in other places. I keep thinking about Harriet Tubman over and over again, because Harriet Tubman had no navigational system. She had nothing to rely on. She had never traversed that pathway. And yet she was able to get out of slavery, get to the north and come back, perhaps different routes, and go back different routes and bring others out. She allowed herself to be still enough. And I'm saying this to people because this is critical. Yeah. This is serious. I know the energy of what's going on pulls us. But if we don't have quiet and still moments to get the mind of God, to give us the navigational system to deal with this manner of complexity and evilness, God has the answer, but there are things that we can still do on the ground. And let me tell you something about good. If we keep doing good, if we keep doing it out of a heart of love, something's going to break. That's all I can say. It's going to break. But again, it has to be strategic. We've got to come together more. I know we talk about that, but we still have too many silos, because we need to figure out the strategy. And part of that strategy is going to come from God downloading to us so that we can work together collectively to overcome all of these tricks and evil things that are happening to humankind right now in this nation.
So there you go, Dr. Bernice King, Reverend Dr. Bernice King. So, you got to understand that her position in many ways comes from her spiritual guidance and whether that's fully your cup of tea or not, what you want to extrapolate from that is keep doing the good. Keep finding others out there to do the good with. Keep finding ways to, when you don't hit the mark, and we're all in this fight together right now, but we can't do it alone. We can't be in those silos. When you don't hit the mark, and we don't, every day we all miss the mark in so many different ways, we have to keep searching for ways to find the good and keep doing the good and keep coming together to make things as best as we possibly can. And right now, when she talked about being strategic, I think part of the strategic play here is it's really simple. I know this is I don't mean to oversimplify it in a very complicated environment that we're in, but the simplest thing you can do, and you could go back and listen to any of the interviews from last week that I did and the wonderful people that I was honored to speak with. Each one of them, in some way or another, said, find something, some group, some organization, some person to connect with in this fight. And it's a basic thing. And like I said, I don't want to oversimplify it. However, I do believe that, and that's one of the things that Dr. Bernice King was saying about doing the good, is in creating your strategy or your strategic way of navigating right now. A lot of this is about connecting with people that you need to connect with, but maybe you hadn't thought to connect with. And a lot of this is about finding the people that are as much like-minded as possible, because then I believe you feel less like you're alone and on this journey by yourself. And we're on this journey right now. There's no other way of looking at it. We're in an extraordinarily tough spot in this country, and we can see it so clearly by all the things that are happening, by all the if you want to put it in the vein of what's being put upon us. This administration is putting so much on so many people. And when I talk about this, and we'll say this and we'll go to break, you know that it's impacting all of us, because when governors of states, mayors of cities, city council people of cities are talking about how this administration's decisions and behavior is forcing them to operate in a different way than they may have wanted to or planned for when they ran for and became elected to an office, you know it affects all of us, because those state and those local and those neighborhood decisions are being impacted by this awful administration. So we do have to, at our toughest of times, connect in those ways and work hard to not get into and stay in our silos. So I saw this from Dr. Bernice King from Contrarian News posting, and I thought it would be good to start our week off. Let's get it going, guys. 773-763-9278 is the number. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
WCPT replay.
Do we have another caller? Hello?
Hello there. It's Steve from the Gold Coast, Warren.
Steve Giovano. What do you know, kiddo? How are you?
There you go. Good. Warren, great guy, knows his business. I mean, from the business side of it to the mechanics. Like I said, known the guy for 20 years. I mean, we met. We were both seeing the same woman. I happen to be married to her, but hey, you can.
What is happening?
No. It was all clean.
Just got spilled. Hold on. I gotta get
you can't, but you can't put a price on a guy who, like Warren. I mean, she can go, but I mean,
You're hilarious, Steve.
No, I'm joking.
It's a joke.
Can we mark that as a clip for Warren's show from here on out?
Keep listening to WCPT 820, because facts matter.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Richard Chu's got his eyes on the truth, and you're right where you need to be. This is Chu's Views.
Hey guys, welcome back again to the show. Let's hit them with a couple of Choose Views news items on this February 23rd, 2026. Jobless claims fell, but more Americans remain out of work. Applications for unemployment benefits fell by 23,000 last week, the biggest drop since November. The Labor Department said Thursday that 206,000 Americans filed initial claims in the week ending February 14th, undercutting most previous estimates. That figure has only dipped below 210,000 a few times in the past year, but continuing claims hit a 6-week high of 1.87 million, suggesting that although layoffs overall remain low, workers have been finding it more difficult to find new jobs, according to a Bloomberg economist. The U.S. trade gap balloons to one of the largest in decades. U.S. trade deficit widened to $70.3 billion in December, far more than economists expected, and up 33% from November, closing out a year of erratic imports driven by tariff threats. The Commerce Department said last Thursday that the full-year deficit reached $901.5 billion, one of the largest since 1960. Exports jumped 3.6% to $357.6 billion, while exports fell to $287.3 billion. Pharmaceutical and gold imports were particularly volatile. The Fed minutes temper expectations on additional cuts. While there is a general agreement on holding interest rates steady during the Federal Reserve's January meeting, minutes of the gathering suggest that there was little appetite for any additional rate cuts in the near term. In fact, several Fed officials floated the possibility of a rate hike if inflation stays above target. Some argue more cuts would be appropriate if inflation eased in line with their forecast, while others said rates should stay put in order and to carefully assess incoming data. And last but not least, Amazon surpasses Walmart as the biggest company by sales. What's that mean? Amazon has ended Walmart's decades reign as the world's biggest company by revenue, though the achievement may include an asterisk. Walmart said Thursday it reported sales of $713.2 billion for most of the recent fiscal year, trailing Amazon's 2025 sales $717 billion. The differentiator between the world's biggest physical retailer and its dominant e-commerce one wasn't shopping, however. It was the explosive growth of Amazon's cloud computing business, an area where Walmart doesn't compete. So, by many analysts, they're saying that this is sort of a hollow victory because Amazon didn't beat Walmart in the retail game. So there you go. A couple of Choose Views news items on this Monday morning, February 23rd, 2026. As you guys know, I am going to be this coming weekend on Sunday, specifically in North Carolina, doing an event, a fireside chat called Building Bridges, along with North Carolina Democratic Party Chair Anderson Clayton on Sunday, this coming Sunday, March 1st, just 2 days before the state's Democratic primary. We'll be joined by North Carolina State Reps Rodney Pierce and Dante Pittman. Also, Pastor James Gaillard, candidate for North Carolina State Senate. The event takes place at the Word Tabernacle Church in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, this coming Sunday, March 1st, from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. To register, go to heartlandsignal.com and click on my picture. That will take you to my show page where you'll find information about the event and a registration link, or send a text to us here at 773-763-9278, and we will send you the link. So there you go. All right, a couple of news items that you may not have seen or heard, or you may have, but we'll talk about them here for a moment. And you guys saw that the Supreme Court said basically no. I haven't read all of the ruling, but the Supreme Court said, "Hey, Donald, no, you can't. You're not allowed with the tariffs." And I'm simplifying it by design. And so J.B. Pritzker, our governor here in Illinois, sent a letter to. Devin's laughing. Sent a letter to good old Donald and said, "Hey, Orange, send us back our money. I forgot the exact number. I think it's 7. Check that for me, guys. How much was it? 17? 17 billion. Yeah. All right. I thought it was. I was close. $17 billion. Send us back our money. And I thought that was kind of cool. I think he was the first governor. 17 billion. That's M. Okay. Send us back our money. Send us back our money. And I think it's kind of cool that Governor Pritzker did that to send a message. And now there are others that are kind of requesting a similar, I guess you could say, payback. So I'm gonna just read a couple of highlights from an article. Actually, one from our good friend Sarah Jones. The Trump administration stole tariff money from every American, and it won't give it back. When the Supreme Court ruled that Trump's reciprocal tariffs were not legal, it created a big problem for the Trump administration. Reuters asked Penn Wharton budget model economist to calculate how Trump may owe the American people in tariff refunds, and reported that more than $175 billion in U.S. tariff collections are subject to potential refunds after the Supreme Court on Friday struck down Donald Trump's broad emergency tariffs, according to the Economist's work. Trump has touted that the revenue generated by all of his tariffs were estimated by the Congressional Budget Office at about $300 billion annually over the next decade. Refunds of $175 billion would exceed the combined fiscal 2025 spending by the Department of Transportation and Department of Justice. And of course, Democratic presidential contenders and governors like J.D. Pritzker and Gavin Newsom have jumped on this and demanded that Trump issue tariff rebate checks. So there you go. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I think, this is one of those moments where when I was reading this over the weekend and thinking about it in terms of how to get it done, I thought about it from the perspective and the angle, maybe a better word, of class action lawsuit. Because there's a class. The class is the American people, frankly. And the standing is that the administration told the country that we're doing this in an emergency. We need to do it as an emergency order, when in fact there was no emergency. So either they lied or they were wrong, or both. So class action lawsuits typically need standing. Who has the standing rather, is the American people. American businesses. But here's the other group that has standing because of the way in which they literally had to change their budgets to deal with what the federal government did to impact its citizens. And those are governors. Governors, in many ways, as representatives and chief executives of their state, they hold a certain amount of responsibility when it comes to allocation of any of our resources. So if they're harmed by something the federal government, like here's a good example. When I was doing a little bit of research on this, if there's a federal entity, and I'm trying to use the right words, if there's a federal entity and they do something that impacts, just say, for example, the water condition in a particular community, or if there's a state entity that does something that impacts a city, they have a responsibility to that city. Let's say it's an environmental issue, to clean it up. If they don't, then the jurisdiction has standing. So in this case, the governors, I think, could really send a great message. And this is why sometimes I go, guys, you got to think about how to play the angle game. You can't always come directly at them. You got to play the angle. And I think the angle could be this right here. Every Democratic governor in the state, because we know the Republicans are going to be punks about it. Every Democratic governor in the state, they should get together and they should file a class action lawsuit against the Trump administration. And that class is them representing the citizens of their state and the harm that was caused by the tariffs. Because in that are also going to be the businesses that operate in those respective states. So it's a huge class of people. But there's only, 24 Democratic governors, 20, whatever the number is. Let's call it 25. It's somewhere right in the middle. That's the class right there. How many do we have, Deb? So I think it's between 24 and 26. But anyhow, that's how I look at it. That's how I think it could be a huge way to put the screws to him right now and throw him yet another hurdle. 23. Got it. I was reading it. He did it that way. I was like, that's it. So 23, all of y'all get together and say, yeah, here it is. And there might be a couple of Republicans that might jump on the bandwagon as a way. They may not do it for the economic reasons, but they might do it for political reasons to help to give the impression to their citizens that we got your back. But that's just me. I sometimes think way out of the box, like way, way out there. But it would be a distraction. It would be something that he'd have to deal with, that if 23 governors in the country decided that they were going to file a class action lawsuit against the Trump administration asking for their money back. And if I were the head of the Democratic Governors Association, I would be putting those papers together now to file that lawsuit in federal court. Yep, that's what I would be doing. But anyhow, what we're going to do right now is take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT, AM 820 in Chicago, and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
If you owe back taxes, listen carefully to rule number 1. Never go up against the IRS alone. They're cracking down, freezing bank accounts, garnishing paychecks, canceling passports. Even your home or business could be at risk. But here's what they don't tell you. The IRS has powerful tax relief programs that could save you thousands if you qualify. That's why smart people call OPTIMA Tax Relief, America's #1 tax resolution firm. Nobody knows these programs like the experts at OPTIMA. Their team of tax attorneys and licensed professionals have resolved over $2 billion in tax debt for people just like you. The IRS is not stopping, so don't wait, and don't take them on alone. For tax help you need, for tax help you can trust, call Optima today for a free consultation.
Call 800-780-3599. 800-780-3599. 800-780-3599.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. We'll see a few spotty flurries at times here for today with partly sunny skies and high into the upper 20s. Breezy winds out of the north at 10 to 20 miles per hour, gusting as high as 30. And then for tonight, mostly cloudy with a low near 19. Tuesday, mostly cloudy, breezy, high 42 degrees. And by Wednesday, plenty of blue skies and sun, a high around 35. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 21.
You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chu.
Yes, welcome back, guys. Thanks for being with us this morning. Hope you're getting up and about. It's windy out here in Chicago. We get a couple of flurries, but nothing seems to be sticking, which is great. And wherever you are in the country, if you're getting out and about and getting ready to go, just be so safe and careful in your commute. All right. We have an ongoing conversation, is probably the way I'll put this, when it comes to our democracy. We have this ongoing Save Our Democracy conversation. And the 2024 election was a call out, a shout out to everybody that this is the most important election that we've ever had, and we are doing it in the eyes of saving our democracy. I think a lot of people may not been able to grab onto that. And I think that's largely because the question is, what is our democracy? With us this morning is someone that is, if not an expert, certainly someone that's pretty well versed in the discussion around democracy and has been writing about it for a long, long time and putting together a number of projects on that subject. Dan Protess is a co-executive producer of WTTW's award-winning show initiative called First Hand. So good morning, Dan, and welcome to Choose Views on WCPT. How are you doing on this Monday, February 23rd, 2026?
Good morning. A little bit cold. I was just out there walking the dog, but I'll get over it. I think that the worst of winter is past us.
I would agree with you, but, let you and I stay away from what my father used to say when I was a kid. And I've said this before, that the weather people are the biggest liars out there because they always get it wrong.
Yeah.
So you and I will stay away from being the weather persons this morning. But I would agree with you that certainly here in Chicago, we're on that. We have reason, Dan, to be excited about the next day because we think, okay, it's going to be 39 tomorrow, then it's going to be 40 the next day and 43. So we always get hopeful this time of year that we've only got another few weeks before we can legitimately say we're there. So cool.
Yeah, and I'm here to offer hope about the future of American democracy. How's that for a segue?
Oh man, that was tight. One step at a time, one day at a time. Dan, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but if you do or you don't, help our listeners all over the country understand what democracy in your eyes and experience really means, and then how to kind of give people this is what democracy should look like in a way in which folks can kind of digest it and then go, yeah, that's worth saving or protecting.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that framing of the question. And with this WTTW series, Firsthand Democracy, one thing I thought at the beginning of working on the project is that chant you often hear at protests, this is what democracy looks like. Mm-hmm. Because you hear that and people are out protesting, and in their estimation, that's what democracy looks like, is taking to the streets and making your voice heard. But I was always taught in school that democracy is a form of government where you get to vote for your elected officials, which, complicates things a little bit when you start looking at what the various faces of democracy might be. So, I guess to me, it's a responsive form of government. It's supposed to be a responsive form of government where whether you're voting or you're voting with your feet at a protest, or you're going down to your state capitol and making your voice heard by meeting directly with your elected officials. It's a form of government where we the people don't necessarily get to have the say over every last piece of legislation that affects our lives. We don't sit down and craft legislation, but we have a vague idea of what we believe in. We tell our elected officials, they respond, and if they don't respond, next time we vote them out. And so, it's supposed to be a system of a virtuous feedback loop where we want to see them do something, they do something, and then they get reelected.
So do you think that, and if so, give us some signs that it is or is not, that our democracy is healthy right now? And if we were to rank it, this is the only thing I can come up with to kind of give us some context. On a scale of 1 to 10, give us a ranking, give us a sort of a rating, and then what that really means, if that makes sense.
I'm going to dodge your question a little bit, and I'm going to say that my opinion doesn't matter. I think that if you talk to your average American, there is a widespread sentiment. I think we can all agree. There's widespread sentiment that our democracy is not fully functioning, and that cuts across political stripes. I think on the left and right, people feel like their government is not responsive to them and their needs, and that something is broken. And so that's, hopefully with this Firsthand Democracy series, these are 5 documentaries about people who are doing something about that, to doing their small part. And I'm hoping these stories will offer people a little bit of hope that there is something that they can do beyond going to the ballot box once every couple of years to make their government more responsive to them. So we profiled a bunch of different people. One is a civics education teacher in the Chicago area at Evanston Township High School, who is doing what is really the most basic work in any democracy. We need to have functioning media and functioning education system so that people understand how our system of government works and they understand who they're voting for and what the issues are that are affecting them. I didn't end up, it would have been nice to do maybe next year. At some point in the future, we could do a story about the media, because obviously the work that you're doing and everyone out there in the media is doing is extraordinarily important as well. This teacher is really amazing, and his students kind of give me hope for the future that maybe the next generation will care as deeply as we want everyone to be caring right now, and we'll understand how the system works. I the other day, there was that Supreme Court decision about the tariffs, and I heard someone say, since when does the judicial branch have power over the executive branch?
Wow.
And I was just like, what? And I wish that were a one-off, but I think,
wow,
one of the many ways in which we have failed ourselves.
So
as a country
Dan, I got to dive in with you on this, because I'm going to jump in with the life preserver on this one for us, because one of the notes that I have here is to ask you, because I know that with regard to firsthand, one of the stories or storytellers, as I like to put it with this, and peacekeepers, is an educator. So my brain went down, okay, where are we dropping the ball when it comes to civics in our country? You guys, you get into this a little bit, but right there, if someone says, where does the Supreme or the court system get the suspenders to think that they can, have this kind of sway? Did they forget that we have three branches of government, or at least we're supposed to, that they're supposed to function? So help us kind of pull ourselves out of the mud on where civics has got, or the lack of teaching it, or whatever, however you want to frame it, because that's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, here in Illinois, civics education is required. That doesn't mean it's always an excellent education, or the education that this teacher, Mr. Patel in Evanston, is offering his students. That's one of the 5 stories. We also did a story about a new immigrant. Her name is Isabel, who became a citizen, immigrated from Mexico, and you're to speak in civics education, you are required in order to pass that test to become a new citizen, to understand the history and how our system of government works. And she became a citizen with the help of a nonprofit, and now she's giving back to the next generation of would-be American citizens and preparing them for their citizenship test. And this is happening in the midst of ICE raids that are upending her community, and she's coming to grips with the reality of the new country that she now calls herself a citizen of. We also, I don't know if you're aware of this, but you actually make an appearance in one of our stories. Did you know this?
Me, Richard Chu, or it's a WCPT?
You. Yes, you, Richard Chu.
Come on, man. I didn't know that.
Yeah, you didn't notice the camera in your face. You were at there had been ICE raids on the northwest suburbs, and you spoke, I believe it was in Elk Grove Village.
Oh, yeah.
At a rally.
Yes, I did. I do remember speaking, but I didn't realize. Okay, I guess I got to. Thank you for helping me understand. I missed something.
Yeah. So that story is it's about a woman named Julie Mortensen. I don't know if you know her specifically.
Yeah, I know Julie well.
Yeah. She is a 72-year-old grandma. She has a full-time, she calls it her resistance calendar, where she keeps track of all the protests that she's going to on a daily basis. And it's, just a real inspiration to everyone about how they can get involved in their communities when they've got maybe a little bit more time on their hands after the kids are out of the house and after they've retired from their careers, that there is another life for them in in holding our government accountable. And her story is super inspirational, and you give a nice little speech there. You made a cameo. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, interesting about Julie. Yeah, she's exactly that. I've had the opportunity to speak at a couple other events and to moderate a town hall for some of the folks that are running for Congress. And yeah, she is exactly that person. She is constantly in the fight. She is a short, but powerful in physical stature, but powerful in what she does, and is bringing in so many people to this fight. And it is, that is a firsthand. You're absolutely right. That is a person that's right there on the ground doing what your project does so well, which is to explore what everyday folk are doing in this conversation. Talk a little bit more about some of the other stories inside of this and what it meant to and means to you to have talked with these people and really kind of gotten in their world.
Well, and it means a lot to me in that these, not only are we elevating their voices through these documentaries, also the WTTW News will be doing stories about democracy all throughout 2026. But we also have billboards of these folks. You'll see them all over the city, which to put Julie's face and this civics education teacher's face up on a billboard by the side of the highway. I love just elevating everyday people to that kind of stature for the important work that, I mean, we've got our celebrities who we tend to elevate, but it's nice to make celebrities out of people who are doing good work in their communities. We also have a documentary about a woman named Marianne Coulter. She's with an organization called Braver Angels. I don't know if you're familiar with Braver Angels. They help facilitate dialogue between Republicans and Democrats. We've forgotten, I think partially because of social media, we've forgotten how to talk to each other as Americans civilly. We remember how to talk. We don't know how to talk in a civil manner. That organization is really extraordinary, and it's the work they are doing is almost like the work of a psychologist. It's almost like half politician, half family therapist, I would say, is a lot of the work that they're doing. Helping people see that the person on the other side of the aisle from them is a human being and looking for common ground. Doesn't mean you have to agree on every issue, but looking for ways in which maybe you believe, that democracy is under threat and that we need to do things to preserve our democracy, or just basic values of caring for your neighbor, that you might disagree with someone politically, but that they, are someone who cares about their family and their neighbors. That's another documentary. And these are all available now at WTTW.com/firsthand. And then we also did a story about a woman with Chicago Votes. Her name is Camille. And she lost her mother to a homicide when she was quite young, and when she was 5 or 6 years old, had to testify in a courtroom, which is obviously terrifying. I mean, all around an awful experience for a young person to have. And so the story is about how she takes that pain that she experienced as a young person and tries to transform it into some kind of sense of purpose, fighting very specifically on issues around courtrooms. Who are the judges that Chicago Votes, or one of the organizations she's affiliated with, puts out a voter guide, so we know who these dozens or hundreds of judges are who we all are asked to sit down and vote for in a couple of weeks here. They actually monitor in the courtroom, like watch judges' activities from day to day so that they can help make us better informed as voters. And she's working on something called the Race Act. She's taking a bus down at the beginning and end of her story. She's taking a bus down to Springfield at like 4 a.m. to talk to her elected officials about an act that would restore voting rights to incarcerated people in Illinois. And also, coming back to civics education, create civics education programming in Illinois state prisons.
Wow, that's fascinating, Dan. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu, and we are talking with Dan Protess, who is the co-producer and of this great new work through WTTW known as Firsthand. But you've been doing this type of work for a while, and I'm sitting here sort of looking at the notes and the stories. Braver Angels, the Race Act, Chicago Votes. The great thing about documentaries, and I was reminded of this last fall, late summer, fall, when I watched with my wife the documentary, one of the documentaries on Katrina, and it reminded me of the hard work that goes into putting one together, but also the stories that don't get told about people who are in the middle of a fight, whatever it might be. Julie Mortenson's a good example. Nobody knows about, who would know about Julie Mortenson? But now, because of this work that she's doing and the people that she's connecting and helping pulling us out of our silos, if you will, this is getting done. And people are more being more proactive in many ways and kind of starting their own things or at least connecting with others who have started something. And each of these pieces that you just talked about and these organizations are all kind of doing the same. So it's really great to have you on to talk about these this morning, Dan. I appreciate you kind of breaking some of those things down. I have this theory about democracy, and I said this a little bit at the beginning, that a lot of people they haven't made it personal, and I don't mean that as a criticism. I don't mean that as a criticism. Nobody take it that way. Maybe they haven't had to make it personal. But how do you feel that plays in terms of this fight to save and preserve and grow our democracy? Is it something that you think that people need to make it more personal, or they can find a way to make it more personal, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the outcomes of decisions made in Washington and Springfield and at City Hall affect all of us. So in that way, it's deeply personal. But I guess you're saying that we don't all necessarily see the connection between the vote we make and actions that are taken by our elected officials. Is that what you're saying?
I think that sometimes is it, and it becomes a big thing. And you know how we all as humans, the big thing is the thing we fear. So I wonder in some cases if people fear democracy or fear the discussion around it because it is a big thing, and until it becomes personal, then it may not be something that folks want to tackle or even lean into. That's I'm asking a question and also kind of stating an opinion. And I'm just curious.
I mean, you definitely hear people say, it doesn't really make a difference. But, because I guess if it all comes down to your vote, sure, your vote is going to be one of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions, which is one of the reasons in this series we really wanted to show people who were trying to affect change beyond the ballot box about issues that specifically make a difference to them in their lives. But it can be somewhat abstract, and it can be frustrating when there are issues that people do care deeply about and they don't see their government responding to them and the issues that they care about. But I mean, I don't know. Politics, democracy is deeply personal, should be deeply personal. I guess we've just kind of lost sight about the ways in which, and I guess that also comes back to the issue of civics education, that maybe people are not fully aware of the extent to which decisions that they make at the ballot box affect decisions made in Washington. And then affect their daily lives. And I mean, that has been one of the breakdowns, and I do think this comes back to the media. One of the breakdowns in our system is that people are not fully aware of the actions that their government is taking. I know during the Biden administration, there had been we call it the Green New Deal, whatever. What did they end up calling the that bill, that package?
Wow. I can't think of the name of it, but I know what
Yeah.
But go where you were going with this.
Yeah, I know there had been hopes by the previous administration that people would see actions being taken that they were in favor of, creating green jobs, and that those jobs would that money would hit the ground. They'd see their neighbors or maybe themselves getting employment or funds trickling down to their communities, and that would affect their vote. I think, first of all, there is a failure of those dollars to trickle down to communities. There's also just a failure of administration sometimes to communicate to people. And again, I'm going to bring us back to the media. There's a failure of the media to educate people about how policy is affecting their everyday lives. And so, the current administration, obviously you could be a fan of the current administration or not a fan of the current administration. They make it very clear the ways in which they are acting, and it may, feel chaotic on a day-to-day basis, but they're, we find ourselves in this social media communications environment where I think sometimes chaos plays better in the social media feed than clear, concise communication.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that too, Dan, not to cut you off, but I think a lot of it is also the chaos in and of itself is a tool of distraction. And it's a tool of disenfranchisement. It creates an environment where people don't want to deal with, acknowledge whatever the wording is with the thing, whatever the thing is. So they tune out. And since there is a certain, flexibility or malleability to how social media is presented to all of us or how we take it in, we can very easily be manipulated by how the algorithm is working. There isn't an algorithm necessarily in the day-to-day news reporting. It's there in front of you, and here it is. I shouldn't say there isn't one, but it's not one in the manner in which social media gets to us. So I'm with you in terms of the media's for dropping the ball, if you will, or certainly fumbling it and educating in a neutral way on things that we can agree on, that we all know, that we all have in common. They definitely they've definitely fumbled there, without a doubt. There's no question in my mind.
Yeah. And so bringing us back to documentaries, that one thing that we can do with series like this Firsthand series is to dramatize, is to hopefully grab people's attention with human stories of real people in their communities who are living at times dramatic lives that are hopefully fascinating. And so hopefully people watch, and it cuts through the noise to a certain extent. But sure, if the thing, you said the thing, that people are distracted from the thing. If the thing is inflation, people, all right, inflation's not super exciting.
Yeah. It's a reality.
It's a reality. It's something that people care deeply about. It affects them every day when they go to the cash register at the grocery store, but it's not as dramatic as, say, the National Guard descending on a city.
Right.
And yet it is a thing that people care deeply about. And it's, for
and
us
in many
to
ways,
understand.
many ways, Dan, check this out. Inflation, as it were, or the price of things. Let's break it down even more, because when you and I go to the grocery store, we don't go, boy, this damn inflation. We go, man, stuff is too high right now. And so that right there too is from a languaging or messaging standpoint, it isn't personal necessarily, the word inflation, but it impacts every single person every part of their day. So it is, those are those things where I think a lot of times we don't get a simple enough message. And guys like you and I are kind of somewhat responsible to try to simplify some things so that people can take them in more bite-sized pieces and then realize, oh, this does impact me. This is part of our democracy. This is part of how we have to try to work forward. But that's just kind of how I'm seeing it based on what you had just said. this documentary, this work that you're doing is phenomenal. It just is. And then there's not enough time right now in this segment to talk about everything in it. But I appreciate you breaking down some of the stories within. And I recommend everybody go and check out Firsthand. How can people get a hold of it? How can they view it? What can they do to link themselves up to being able to check it out, Dan?
Yeah, so they can go to WTTW.com/firsthand and watch all 5 documentaries for free. It's public television. That's the wonderful thing that we do. And then there's, as I mentioned earlier, WTTW News is going to be doing stories about democracy throughout 2026. It is the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, so there is a reason why we are doing this right now. And then we're also going to be doing community events throughout the year. We had a big kickoff last week, and we'll be having discussions in communities across the city. So people can come out and join us and meet us in person.
Keep me on your short list to make sure you send me whatever notifications or invitations to it, because I'd love to show up and be a part of the success of the work that you're doing. I think it's just important that people have other tools to plug into. So make sure to keep me on your short list of folks so I can come check things out with what we're doing.
Yeah, and you have to watch Julie's story so you can see her cameo.
There you go. Dan Protess, thank you so much for hanging out with us this morning. It's been a joy, and I could just listen to you over and over again because of this great information that you present to so many people. Check out the work, you guys. You got to check out Firsthand through WTTW. Thanks for hanging with us, man. It's good to talk to you.
Thanks. Good talking with you.
All right. We'll talk soon. Take care. All right. Dan Protess, co-executive producer of WTTW's award-winning multi-platform initiative, Firsthand. We're going to take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back. Hey Progressives, it's Richard Chu, host of Choose Views weekdays 6 to 8 a.m. Central. We're all anxious for the 2026 midterm election to arrive so we can restore some sanity and much needed oversight to our government. In fact, it's the most important midterm election in American history, and Choose Views will be in the thick of it, bringing you candidate interviews on a regular basis. I'll be talking to Democratic Party hopefuls running for House and Senate at the federal and state level, as well as candidates for governor and other state and local offices.
I am in love with our ability to fight for our rights, to fight for our future, to fight for our freedoms, to fight as our ancestors fought. It's just our moment. This is just our time to stand up and to speak up. We can't give up on this.
If you miss any of the interviews live, you'll be able to find them all on WCPT's candidate interviews page at heartlandsignal.com/candidates. That's Choose Views weekdays from 6 to 8 a.m. on WCPT, Chicago's progressive talk for 20 years.
Hey guys, this is Tara Devlin for the Political Voices Network. This is America, right? We don't do kings here. No crowns, no thrones, no authoritarian cosplay. That's why we created the No Kings American Flag pin. For the low price of $20.26, that's 2026, we're keeping our eye on the prize here. This well-crafted enamel pin is the standard 1-inch American flag lapel pin, but this one features the patriotic No Kings symbol that defines our rallying cry. It's your quiet way of signaling to other patriots that you believe in democracy, and yeah, that still matters. You can grab yours now at store.politicalvoicesnetwork.com. That's store.politicalvoicesnetwork.com. The No Kings American Flag pin. Get it now at store.politicalvoicesnetwork.com.
Amazon Business empowers leaders with smart business buying tools, leaving time to focus on strategy and growth. Free up your teams and focus on your future at AmazonBusiness.com.
AP News, I'm Marcela Sanchez. Homeland Security has changed its announcement concerning TSA pre-check at airports. AP correspondent Donna Warder has more.
The Department of Homeland Security said earlier that it suspended the TSA pre-check and global entry airport security programs while there's a partial government shutdown. Now it's saying that pre-check will remain operational, but it's not clear whether global entry will be affected. Both programs are meant to help speed registered travelers through security lines. The partial government shutdown began February 14th after Democrats in the White House couldn't reach a deal on legislation to fund Homeland Security. And Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said in a statement Saturday night that shutdowns have serious real-world consequences. Donna Warder, Washington.
The Supreme Court's ruling against President Trump's tariffs has countries like China and South Korea watching for what Washington's next steps will be, while financial markets took the news in stride. The decision announced last Friday could potentially disrupt arrangements worked out in trade negotiations since Trump announced tariffs on dozens of countries in April of 2025. The 25th Winter Games have come to a close in Europe.
The twin Olympic cauldrons in Milan and Cortina d'Ampezzo have been extinguished, signaling the end of the most spread-out Winter Games in Italy. International Olympic Committee President Kirsty Coventry declared the 2026 Games over at the closing ceremony in Verona, saying the Games, quote, set a new, very high standard for the future. Norway led the way with Winter Olympics records of 41 total medals and 18 golds, followed by 33 medals and 12 golds for the United States. Host nation Italy won 30 medals and 10 golds. I'm Gethin Coolbaugh.
This is AP News. The Mexican army says it killed powerful drug lord Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes in western Mexico on Sunday. He was known as El Mencho and was the powerful leader of the Jalisco New Generation cartel. Cartel members responded by burning cars and blocking roads in 20 Mexican states. By late Sunday, authorities announced they'd cleared most of the more than 250 cartel roadblocks. In an interview with the AP, former DEA Chief of International Operations, Mike Vigil, congratulated Mexico, saying the operation sends a powerful message to the Trump administration. Vigil said the U.S. constantly threatens to send troops into Mexico and claims it doesn't do enough to fight cartels. He said the operation shows Mexico is fighting hard and effectively. The U.S. confirmed it provided intelligence support in the operation and applauded Mexico's army for taking down one of the most wanted criminals in both countries. I'm Marcela Sanchez, AP News.
This is 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. We'll see a few spotty flurries at times here for today with partly sunny skies and high into the upper 20s. Breezy winds out of the north at 10 to 20 miles per hour, gusting as high as 30. And then for tonight, mostly cloudy with a low near 19. Tuesday, mostly cloudy, breezy, high 42 degrees. And by Wednesday, plenty of blue skies and sun, a high around 35. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 21.
Who is Kevin Ryan? Hey, that's me. I'm a Chicago public school teacher, union member, and Marine Corps veteran. Most importantly, I am a New Deal Democrat from a new generation, and I am running for the United States Senate to make our government work for all of us, not just the 1%. Now, you might not have heard of me because, well, I am just like you. I don't have millions of dollars to spend on TV ads, I'm not backed by a billionaire, and I've been excluded from the debates because I refuse to raise millions of dollars from the 1%. Instead, I am backed by ordinary people like you. I'm the only candidate to campaign in all 102 counties in my campaign school bus, and we fund our campaign by simply passing a hat around. So we thought we'd spend some of that money to introduce our campaign to you on WCPT Radio. If you want to send a real progressive to the United States Senate and not another bought and paid for Democrat, go to kevinryan.com, spread the word, and vote for the candidate endorsed by Illinois progressives. My name is Kevin Ryan, I'm running for the U.S. Senate, and I approve this message. Paid for by people of Illinois and Kevin Ryan.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that focuses on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Hey, guys. Welcome back to the second hour of Choose Views on this February 23rd, 2026. Yes, 2026, not 2025. I haven't made that mistake too many times this year, so I'm happy with myself in that space. All right. It is Monday, and I am so thrilled, as always, to have our good friend Sarah Jones with us this morning from the Daily with Sarah Jones and Politicus as well. Good morning, Sarah. Welcome to Choose Views. How you doing?
Well, good morning, Richard. I'm kind of excited to talk to you and hear, I want to know what you think is going on and where your listeners are, in reacting to what's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
The temperature of where people are at right now, because I feel like there's this huge, it just seems like people are feeling so, weighed down and, like they're having a hard time going forward through all of this, even as we see these little pieces coming out saying that really he's losing some power, right?
Yeah. I think that what I'm seeing is kind of a combination of things. I think that the central, if I were to say, okay, Sarah, what's the central thing that I'm seeing, feeling, and hearing, is a certain amount of frustration that's boiled over. I think that the two killings by ICE in Minneapolis woke up a lot of people who were kind of willing to go along a little bit, kind of willing to say, well, and then fill in the blanks. I think a lot of people who may operate in that safe space, and this is good, this is just being real. I think because two white Americans were gunned down in the streets by ICE, a lot of folks who might normally sit on the sidelines or say, it kind of really doesn't impact me that much, or I'm okay, and we're going to get through sort of those standard pablum responses when we have an issue. They saw real time that, damn, I guess a lot of black folks were right and other people of color were right and women were right, that these people are crazy. And I think that we can't we can't over talk about, however you want to phrase it, the significance of people seeing that for pretty much real time. People saw that happen. And because people saw it, and we could add into this, all kinds of things that have happened in the last 5-7 years, George Floyd, so many other things. We can go back as far as Trayvon Martin here in Chicago, Laquan McDonald. People saw that, and this time as much as folks want to try to use the excuse that, well, the person that just complied, which is oftentimes what you hear when a black person or a person of color gets taken advantage of, this time there was a certain amount of compliance, but it was also one person was trying to defend another person, and Alex Preedy, and he got gunned down. I think what happened is a lot of people went through a certain amount of depression and seeing that and going, oh my God, how could we as a country call ourselves great or even okay if that stuff's going to happen? And so I think a lot of people, Sarah, kind of got their wits about them to say, I can't sit on the sidelines anymore, or even if I'm involved, I got to get even more involved. And so I'm looking at it in some ways a little bit, optimistically is not the right word, but I'm looking at it in terms of moving forward. I think that those moments, as much as it pains me to say, we've been saying this for decades as black folks and other folks of color, I think that really we can't just rush by how that happening has caused so many people to wake up and get back involved. And I'll tell you that I will say this, if it hadn't happened, that ICE would still be running roughshod in Minneapolis.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. Yeah.
And so I always, I try as best I can, Sarah, and I know I'm giving a longer answer than I wanted to, but when I think about how we got to a place, I try to go back and find, and anybody that knows me, and my wife will tell you this, I always want to go back to a point to find out what was the origination, what started it, because then I think I got more data to try to find my way forward in solving a problem. And I think that those two shootings in such a short period of time, not that should matter, got a lot of people to say, if we are great, we can't be doing this. And
they were on video. They couldn't argue about it. They kept trying to lie about it, but every time it got, even the New York Times is like doing a fact check and saying, here we have every angle. This did happen. And I think that was so powerful for people, on top of it being, and I do think it mattered that it was white people, which it shouldn't matter. But what happens then, we saw that with the civil rights movement, is that people have a lot of people have a tendency to only relate to people that they think they can see themselves in. Mm-hmm. And so that's really what happens, and why, and not to leave out the obvious other issues involved in that, but just to parse out this one little piece, because that is how I think it said, this could be you. Mm-hmm. You could be shot by these people for doing nothing, but trying to help somebody off the ground, which I think is what Alex Preddy was doing. So yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying about that. And when you add into what you just said, the little pieces of sort of eroding his power, mm-hmm. The Supreme Court decision about his tariffs, which is obviously a big conversation topic right now. But this is supposed to be about, why is Congress ceding all their power to this man?
Right.
Right? That's part of what their point was. And I don't really see congressional Republicans wanting to have any kind of self-respect. So yeah. I don't see, they're a party that is like doms and subs, that's what they sort of always look like to me. And so the guy comes in, right? It's whoever they want to get. They just kind of enjoy this like public humiliation.
It's crazy, Sarah.
It's kind of kinky and weird. Like, I mean, it's fine. Like, whatever you want to do, but don't do it when you're making our laws, right? Do that in your bedroom.
Go do that on your personal private time. Don't be an elected official and acting like, some freakazoid from the mid 80s. I mean, we don't need that. And nobody be offended by, No. Sarah and I just stepped off the reservation for a moment there. So nobody be offended.
That was me.
But the point that we have to make here, and by the way, you're listening to Choose Views on WCPT, AM 820 in Chicago, and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu, and we're talking with Sarah Jones, who is, what I would like to say, with all fairness, from the Daily, one of the best writers with her work with Politicus USA. You guys need to follow Sarah. She puts a lot of great content out there every single day, multiple stories, and I kind of want to pivot to that in a moment, Sarah. But I want to come back to this thing about the power piece. Okay, so Congresswoman Robin Kelly initiates impeachment orders for Kristi Noem shortly after the second shooting. And then we've got other elections that people have won. And we've got Democrats with a strong bench that are doing great things and kind of cleaning up the messes that they've made at any level of government. There are some momentum items that are taking place right now that I would say that the corporate media isn't talking enough about. They're talking about it. I had to correct myself the other day. They're not talking enough about it in a way that people can go, I can grab onto something now. I can see that this is actually real. This momentum isn't a one-off, or these things that are happening aren't one-offs. What that does is it gives other entities, and stay with me on this, Sarah, it gives other entities the okay to do the right thing, which then furthers momentum. And the Supreme Court decision could have gone a different direction. Imagine the momentum that Trump would have gotten if the Supreme Court had said the tariffs were cool, but they didn't. So it broke his momentum, which is breaking his power, in my opinion, and it gives our message, our wins, the added momentum. But it has to come from the fact that somebody stepped out on faith, somebody did something where one person goes, okay, they did it, so I probably should do it. They did it, I probably should do it. And I think our anchor, unfortunately, this year is that two people had to die for there to be something where folks could go, damn, I can't be a part of this. And so I do see that there are things that are pulling at his power. He's going after Canada again, hating on Canada, our cousins up north, and so these things are out there. And your point is well taken that his power is being chipped away at with all these little mini victories.
Right. Every time people see his power taken away, this man is trying to do an authoritarian takeover of our democracy, right? So every time he has any check on his power, the powers that he's grabbed that are not his, so the tariffs were this IEEPA. He was trying to use IEEPA, this International Emergency Economic Powers Act, to say he could do whatever he wants, basically. And that's what the Supreme Court says, no, you can't. That's actually a power that goes to Congress. So that is a huge check on his power. And then we see, I think to your point, we take that and we put it in the big pie and we look at people standing up to him, standing up to ICE in Minnesota, and as they have all over the country, but the recent big stories have come from Minnesota, and that all tells the story about people are dissenting. The Supreme Court is chipping away at his power. So he wants the story to be that he took this power and it was given to him, right? Mm-hmm. That's not the story that's coming out. And I also think it's kind of interesting culturally, and I'm going off the reservation again, but I think the halftime show at the Super Bowl was a big cultural moment. And then I also think that it's kind of interesting what just happened at the Olympics, that Alyssa Liu, the women's figure skating, right? She won the gold medal. And this is a very conservative sport, very traditional conservative sport. And here comes this alt girl who has come out on her social media against ICE. Yeah. She is the daughter of an immigrant, and she did it her way, and she got rewarded for that from this very conservative, traditional sport from the judges in this sport, who usually would mark down a woman who isn't Disney princess. If you're not giving Disney princess, then they mark you down. And I mean, that has been an argument that's been made against them. And I just think that culturally, while these authoritarians are trying to take over across the globe, this is happening. We are seeing these changes culturally where people are they're making these surprising decisions. The NFL is very conservative. And they had Bad Bunny, and his message, it love wins.
With so many people.
It resonated. People loved it. Yeah. And that is, to me, like, look at so this is the people. This is the voice of the people, but it's also the voice of big business. That's what we saw. I think that's how I read the Supreme Court, was like, oh yeah, your big business is unhappy with these tariffs too. And so this is where they're going to draw the line. That's the same with the NFL. They saw money in going to love over hate.
Yeah.
To
more people, more people, I think, even though we saw, the regular standard bearers on the right, the Megyn Kellys and all the others of the world that wanted to run out and scream about how, the Super Bowl should be this and we should have a white performer at the Super Bowl and all these other things that they were just doing to get, clicks and views in their crazy echo chamber. What ultimately ended up happening is that so many people were like, well, that was pretty cool. I didn't need to understand the language of what, everything that was being said. But I understood the message, and the message of the performance was bigger than the words that I literally, may not have understood in its entirety. And I think that to your point about the chipping away of the power and the things that people are have been doing, and these images, I think it is starting to resonate. But I still go back to, kind of my guiding light, which is, what is it that's been the thing in recent, weeks, months, this year, if you will, that was in some ways a small reset. And I hate to keep sounding like I'm demeaning or making less sad and serious and hurtful that two people had to give their lives for it to take that. And I was just reminded, last Friday I had General Russell Honoré on, if you recall, from Louisiana and Katrina. And he basically said, and I was reminded of this a moment ago, that, when a white woman gets killed, there's something wrong. And I think that there's a lot of just, reality to that to seeing it happen, and how people said, I got to get involved. I got to be more vocal. I got to find a way to do something, because I can't. This could have been my niece. It could have been my daughter. It could have been, I think a lot of people, majority people in this country, personalized it like I haven't seen in quite a while. And then it's given some permission to other individuals, other entities like the Supreme Court to say, maybe this is our window to do our job. And even Democrats in Congress, to a great extent. I mean, you wrote a great article about Minority Leader Jeffries has kind of found his, he's found his energy again in terms of how he went on Fox and confronted them with facts. And they tried to do their normal Fox thing, but he kept hitting them with facts. Talk a little bit about that and how that's playing into this conversation around people saying, you know what, we've had some wins, and we can keep chipping away at Donald Trump's power.
Well, I think it's interesting to see that the arguments that they usually use in their echo chamber and in their media that then we hear repeated on mainstream media, because studies have shown that for many years, conservatives have set the agenda, the media agenda for the mainstream media. They sort of lead them around by the nose by using these tactics of having this echo chamber that they repeat and repeat and repeat until it becomes the story. And they have tried to do that with the shootings in Minneapolis, for example, and it is not working. And so people are now seizing that and saying, I'm going to talk back. The other thing is, when you raise prices on the American people and then tell them that the prices haven't been raised, they understand that you're not being honest with them, because they are literally paying out of their own pocketbook. And a lot of the people in the Trump administration and other, global elites, I would say, don't understand that people are budgeting from a weekly paycheck to pay for their groceries and their gas. And when you lie to them and tell them those prices haven't gone up, they know they have, because they're doing a budget at home to make sure they can pay for those things, and they're scraping by. So they are telling these stories, but they're not working. And this is given this chance to come and repeat facts in their echo chamber and have it kind of stick in a way that I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
So I think it isn't that Democrats haven't tried to do this, but I think Democrats have been punished for so long by the mainstream media when they won't concede. And I think we saw this whole narrative with the assassination of Charlie Kirk and how that became the story. Everybody had to say certain things and feel certain things or say that they did. But we didn't see the same thing with the Minnesota lawmakers, the Democrats who were assassinated, and everybody has forgotten about them.
Bingo.
And that is a tragedy. And I think that is a failing on, I don't know. I mean, it's a failing that the media doesn't understand, doesn't look at that.
Sarah, here's what I think, and I could be wrong about this, but it shows that there is this real bias. It's not just implied, it's real. And so, and that's a great example. When you talk, going with Charlie Kirk as an example, the right wanted the Democrats to acquiesce and say how awful it was. Well, it's awful to see that happen to anybody, frankly, irrespective of where they sit politically. I didn't want to see that. Nobody wanted that to happen. I couldn't stand the dude, but I didn't want him to, that to be the way his life ended. And I mean that. But I don't have to give up my political beliefs and other things because I can take a moment and go, that was awful. But the difference in how the Republicans across the board looked at what happened to the representative that was killed last year by a right-wing crazy, Miss Good, Mr. Preety, the way that the right looked at that versus how the left looked at Charlie Kirk, and then how the corporate media handled the ways that we looked at it differently, showed that the corporate media's bias is clear. It's not implied, it's real. And does that make sense how I'm saying that?
Oh, I think this is, to me, this is the problem why we can't have nice things in this country. And so yes, this is exactly it. I want people to take away from this conversation that when you see a candidate that you like, if they have good values, meaning they're not going to be bought and paid for by some lobbyist group, for example, maybe they're gonna reject corporate PAC money, right? Maybe they're gonna reject dark money. They are going to be lambasted by the corporate media with false narratives, exaggerated narratives, or just taking apart a failing and making that the story, like we saw they did to Joe Biden.
Yep.
Nobody is telling that story about Donald Trump, and he can barely speak now. They are not telling that story about him, and I cannot. So I would like people to harden themselves. Yes, you want to look at the candidate and make sure there's somebody you can support. Absolutely. Not saying we shouldn't vet people, but these are two different topics. I'm saying the corporate media is not on the side of the people. They're not here to find the best candidate. They're not here to find the person who's going to vote to take on the environment, right? They're not going to protect the environment. They're not here to protect your rights. That is not their agenda.
No.
And so they're not looking at these candidates to say who stands for these good things, who stands for pro-democracy. They're looking at candidates who isn't going to regulate us, who's going to allow us to, make even a bigger merge and have even more power, who's going to allow us to own social media and all of the major studios and major news organizations together, which they are trying to do right now.
Yep.
And, then going to add papers to that, like if there's any papers left. So that's what their agenda is when they go into these things. So we're going to expect to see the people, you look at what they tried to do to AOC, for example, and you look at what they did to I remember what they did to Barack Obama because he wouldn't play to pay on certain things, right? And he didn't go to a lot of the DC sort of events that you have to go to fit in. And so they treated him like, and for a variety of other reasons, but he was given the same treatment they gave to Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And we don't see that happen to Donald Trump.
We don't see it
And
happen.
Donald Trump is an absolute disaster, no matter your party, no matter your political affiliation. He is a disaster as a president.
And all we have to do is just look at the results. If we wanted to make an assessment and a diagnosis and an assessment, is just look at the results. And the results are, to your point earlier, Sarah, that folks sit down at their kitchen table or wherever, and they make out their budget, and they look at where they are, and they have to ask themselves a question: how are we going to cover this? How are we going to take care of that? We all do it in one way or the other. And when people say, well, last year, I got the same stuff and I paid, $50 for it. I paid $75. That's a big number. It's a 50% increase in what they spent. So we can't look away from that. But I'm optimistic, to go back to where we started, about how these fractures in his power or in his perceived power are starting to become a little bit bigger. And the day-to-day wins, the incremental wins, whether it be political races or decisions by courts, and people getting involved in the process, it's what we have to continue to do. We have to keep that momentum up. And it's voices like yours that have really been an instrument in helping us do that. So, as always, I appreciate you hanging out with us on a Monday morning to talk about the things that we're all trying to resolve and make better. So, Sarah, thank you, as always, for taking some time to hang this morning.
It was so nice to talk with you. Thank you for having me on.
As
Keep
always,
up the good fight.
As always, Sarah Jones, y'all check her out. You got to get with her work at the Daily and the Politicus USA. Sarah Jones is one of the best. Thanks for being with us this morning. We will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right, bye now. Let's take a quick break, guys. 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
When it comes to banking, you need a bank you can trust. A bank with a rock-solid reputation and the highest integrity. A bank that gives you the attention and respect you deserve.
ABOC first opened its doors in downtown Chicago in 1922, and we've made our name on deep expertise, best-in-class service, and a strong commitment to our customers. We know the Chicago business market inside and out and can help you craft the perfect banking solution, no matter what type of business you're in.
And if you're looking for a banking partner for your labor union, we can bring the type of expertise that only comes from a bank that was founded by labor unions and still has union employees and shareholders to this day.
Whether you need a deposit account, loan, trust services, or investment management, ABOC has you covered. Let's work together to manage your finances today while planning for a better tomorrow. ABOC, a bank built on a strong foundation.
Visit aboc.com to learn more. Member FDIC.
Hi, I'm LaShawn K. Ford, and I'm running for Congress because I see what's happening in our communities every day. I see young people struggling to find opportunity. I see seniors working harder just to make ends meet, and I see families feeling squeezed by rising costs while Washington stays distracted. This Trump administration has brought chaos and corruption instead of real solutions. We need leadership that listens and delivers. As a state legislator, I've spent years fighting for working families, seniors, and communities that too often get left behind. That record is why I'm endorsed by Congressman Danny K. Davis, former U.S. Senator Roland Burst, former Congressman Bobby Rush, former Secretary of State Jesse White, and the Speaker of the Illinois House, Chris Welch. Make your plan to vote, and on your ballot, punch 31, paid for by LaShawn K. Ford for Congress.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. We'll see a few spotty flurries at times here for today with partly sunny skies and high into the upper 20s. Breezy winds out of the north at 10 to 20 miles per hour, gusting as high as 30. And then for tonight, mostly cloudy with a low near 19. Tuesday, mostly cloudy, breezy, high 42 degrees. And by Wednesday, plenty of blue skies and sun, a high around 35. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 21.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chu.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Thanks for being with us, and thanks to our good friend Sarah Jones from the Politicus USA and the Daily for spending some time with us this morning. Today on Live, Local, and Progressive, Joan Esposito will be taking your calls the first half of the show, then talking to Kendall Scudder, chair of the Texas Democratic Party, Democratic candidate for Illinois Comptroller Holly Kim, and Max Beaver, the Director of Public Information with the Chicago Board of Elections, and North Central College political science professor Susan Schad will be hanging out with Joan. Live, Local, and Progressive weekdays 2 to 5 here on WCPT, heartlandsignal.com, and tune in. Tonight on Driving It Home, Patty Vasquez will be joined by our guest host, Ken Mejia Beal, and their guest, are Harold Gatewood, chair of the Chicago Gay Men's Caucus, Jason Buzzell, Chicago Community Acupuncture, and U.S. Senate candidate Kevin Ryan. Driving It Home with Patty Veskas, weekdays 2 to 5, here on WCPT, the Heartland Signal website, TuneIn, YouTube, and Facebook. Tomorrow on Choose Views, my guest will be Pennsylvania State Representative Jason Dawkins, Evanston Mayor and candidate for Congress Daniel Biss, and Nicole Clark Springer, and Makita Creighton of Deeply Rooted Dance Theater. That's going to be fun, guys. So you want to hang out with us tomorrow. Today, we're going to keep the train moving along. Our environment is, I've said this before a number of times, that a person could be a, quote, climate change denier, or denier of global warming. It could be any of that. But one thing I can assure you is that if myself and Devin were walking down Michigan Avenue and we were at the corner of whatever and whatever, and there were 8 other people with us for a total of 10, all 10 of us are breathing the same air. So for someone to say that the environment doesn't matter, it's a fool's game. With us this morning is a director of environmental and climate justice, Abre Connor, an attorney and director of the Center for Environmental and Climate Justice with the NAACP. And what a great time to have someone of this stature on the show this month of Black History Month and certainly of American History Month. So good morning, Abre, and thank you so much for being with us on Choose Views here on WCPT.
Hi, happy to be here.
Thank you. So, Abre, take a moment and let our audience know a little bit about you and a little bit about your work currently, your ascent to the role that you're in now as Director of Environmental and Climate Justice with the NAACP.
Yeah, well, I grew up in a rural part of Florida, in the central part of Florida, and I recognized at that point that there were differences in how I was able to interact with activities as a child and how other folks who did not look like me were able to interact with activities. I had an albuterol pump. What I didn't realize necessarily was that the fact that we had phosphate plants near where I lived likely impacted my health, the way that I was able to move throughout the world. And that really played a role whenever I knew I wanted to go into civil rights, but I didn't fully understand that intersection of civil rights and environmental issues until a little bit later, closer to like high school. And I went to law school after graduating from college, and I worked in a number of places that focused on civil rights or environmental issues. I worked in the Central Valley of California with migrant farm workers on issues like fracking or water infrastructure issues. And all of that really led to, me doing this role at the NAACP as our first director for our Center for Environment and Climate Justice. The NAACP, of course, has a rich history of understanding the intersection of environment and climate issues with civil rights, leading back to even back in the 1980s in Warren County, North Carolina. But the NAACP recognized the importance of having these centers of innovation and environment and climate justice, to your point that you mentioned earlier, are inextricably connected to how we move around this planet. If we don't have a safe or a clean environment, we can't do a lot of the other things that we feel are important, from voting to going to school to being in our churches, our places of worship, to anything else. And so we have to protect, our communities in a way that will prioritize us, because history has also demonstrated that even when this country started to recognize that we had environmental issues, Black communities and communities who were considered sacrifice zones were still left out of those conversations. And so that's what led me to this work and led me to this lifelong journey that I've been on to ensure that our communities are prioritized in conversations when it comes to environment and climate issues.
Without a doubt, Abre, and I love how you lay that out, because, you've also taught in this space, and you've taught on the importance of education, but education about our environment, understanding that the smallest, I've used this phrase before, a pebble in the pond. You toss a pebble into a pond, a little baby pebble in a pond, and it has that ripple effect. So there's a good visual for everybody if you don't know what I'm talking about. Pebble in the pond, you drop a pebble in the pond, and it's going to have a ripple effect. That's how I see the environment in many cases. And I have to check myself. I have to check myself on, leaving the water running too long, leaving the refrigerator door open too long. I try not to do the small things, but there's a lot of things that people don't know about. So the reason I wanted to reply back with regard to education, there's a lot of stuff that we do that people don't even think about are issues that affect the environment in a negative way. I learned this a few years ago about just idling your car is not the best thing for the environment in terms of warming it up, letting it sit, or sitting at a stoplight and letting, I learned that topping, and this is like, you should know this, but until somebody, kind of hits you upside the head with it, topping off your gas is not good for the environment because of the spillage that takes place for, and we don't even have to get into the conversation about hybrid versus EV when it comes to vehicles, not versus, but inclusive into our environment. That's another conversation you and I'll have another time we have you back on. So there, I've already put that out there to you. But it's the small pebble in the pond moments that I think we all have to be better educated on that impact our environment in such magnificently huge ways. Talk a little bit about that, if you could.
Yeah, I think that you nailed it, with the everyday decisions that we make can help to make a huge difference. And I would also say that some of it has been intentionally placed in our communities and in the propaganda in ways that we don't even necessarily always realize, from the amount of plastic that we have used over the years, and the idea that somehow we can recycle some of that plastic in a way that can somehow be beneficial to our environment. I think the fact that we're moving more towards reusable, having bags that we don't necessarily just throw away, understanding that using plastic bags all the time, that it's likely not going to be recycled, and it's probably ending up in the ocean somewhere, a bunch of debris, that all of these decisions matter. But it also is about these industries, who are making billions of dollars off of the idea of placing more polluted and contaminated types of materials in our communities. So from plastics to oil and gas, the oil and gas industry is $1 billion industry. And for years, they have been able to place, industrial plants in our communities. We're not reaping the benefits of having the pollution in our communities. We are then, forced in some ways to have like oil and gas, petroleum, and just random things that we wouldn't even realize sometimes that there's petroleum or oil and gas in. And I think that it's about the everyday changes. It's also about us showing up, at our city council meetings, asking questions about, some of these industries that are coming into our communities. They're polluting, they're making billions of dollars. They're not being held accountable for, the advertising that they do or pollution that they cause. And so, it's like switching sometimes, if we have the opportunity to switch to infrastructure that allows for more renewable energy, for example, solar, wind, like those types of things, as opposed to the reliance on oil and gas. It's about not using as much plastic. It's about those changes as it relates to our water, but it's also about holding billionaires who are polluting in our communities accountable for the decades and decades of degradation that they have caused to Black communities and frontline communities without ever having to reinvest in any way back into the communities where they have benefited from but caused the most harm.
There's no question about it. I mean, you're listening to Choose Views on WCPT, AM 820 in Chicago, and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu, and we are talking with the Director of Environmental and Climate Justice with the NAACP, Abre Connor. So We got a lot to talk about. We don't have all the time in the world. We're going to have you back because this is something that this is one of those make America great again moments. What do I mean by that? If our country's going to be continuously striving to be great, we do have to take care of this thing that Mother Nature or Father Nature or whomever gave us, and that's this planet. And I've got 2 or 3 things to say about this real quickly, then I'm going to turn it back over to you, Abre. We know that communities of color, Black communities of color, and I like I've got some new words to my vocabulary, frontline communities and rural sacrifice zone. Oh, you said sacrifice zones. I added rural to it. So this is the thing I say to folks so many times. Yes, you and I are talking about this from the perspective as being Black folks, and that's important. And many of our frontline people that are impacted by the corporate just raping of our environment are in those frontline communities and those rural white sacrificial zones. And so this is why I beg everybody, don't take this as just two Black folks talking about how these corporations have impacted Black communities. That's a fact. The data backs that up. However, those people that are living along, and last week we had on retired General Russell Abre, and he has been fighting like hell down in Louisiana on the environmental issues there. But he tipped us to what's happening with the Mississippi River and the pollution that's taking place there that's making its way downstream to the Gulf. So this is affecting all of us. I go back to my little goofy, statement. You and me, or me and Devin, the 3 of us are walking down Michigan Avenue in Chicago. The 7 people next to us are impacted by the environment, just like the people in Louisiana are impacted by what the Mississippi River is carrying to them, and the white folks that live in rural communities are being impacted. We all are, and we can't get away from it. And candidly, it's one of the biggest fights that I think we all can agree on, that we all can win if we lean in together. What are your thoughts, Abre?
I 100% agree. And I think that we're starting to see a resurgence of people talking about issues that are actually environment and climate issues. And some communities don't even realize that that's what it is. So with data centers, for example, right now, there's a lot of conversation about AI. Is it in the cloud? Is it in an infrastructure? And a lot of the communities that are being cited now for data centers are a lot of rural white communities, and they're concerned about the noise, the affordability of their electricity bills that are going up. And these are essentially power plants that are being placed in communities. And so it's a conversation, that we've been having for decades about the fact that we shouldn't be putting these infrastructures in communities that are using gas turbines or coal-fired plants or other kinds of fossil fuels in communities, but it's allowing us to have a broader conversation, not just with folks who are in Black communities and not frankly, in places that have been typical sacrifice zones, but because these hyperscale data centers are expanding so far and wide across this country, this is an environment and climate justice conversation that really means that all of us need to be involved, because if there's not an AI data center that's in your community yet, the conversation is likely going to be coming soon. And so I think that now is really the time for us to recognize that, these kinds of policy decisions that we should be fighting for will benefit us all, and not just here in the United States, but globally as well.
Abre, let me ask you this about the data centers. I mean, you talked about this in some of the platforms on your site in terms of stopping dirty data centers. And in my, again, General Abre really tipped us to some new thoughts about this in terms of how one of the big resource grabs is the water. And he said not so much the literal land, but the water. And this is the other thing that I wanted in terms of my question. Do you think that because we don't see the pollution of smoke or gas like you see in a manufacturing facility. The old, my visual is, seeing a northeastern, a Pennsylvania or upper Midwest, Chicago suburb, the Rust Belt communities. You could see, the gas going or the smoke going into the air. With these data centers, it's not as much of a visual. Do you think that that's part of why it's getting a pass? Saying getting a pass is the wrong word, but help me get through this. Do you think that's why there's some because there's a lack of visual that people don't really go, oh, that's a plant that's destroying our universe, our planet? Help me out, Abre. Please help me out.
I think that the way, I remember the first time I went to Data Center Alley in Virginia, and I think some of it is you don't necessarily know what you're looking for, to your point. And it just looks like, for some of these data centers, it just looks like this building that may exist. But when a lot of the visuals now, when they actually are able to, have these drones that go up and they're able to kind of do the heat, mapping of where the pollution is going, and you see how far and how wide and across state lines, and it's not concentrated in one place. I think that that's what we're going to have to start using to educate folks about just how widespread a lot of this pollution is. And I think that, sometimes people don't necessarily realize that it might not be 5 or 6 gallons of water, but it's hundreds of millions of gallons of water that are being used. And for people to understand the strain that it is going to put on already, disinvested in, water infrastructure that communities have been asking for there to be upgrades that are done to those treatment plants. What does that mean when you have hundreds of millions of gallons of water that now are being diverted away from the community itself and now going to just a data center? So I think that part of it is just helping people to understand, one, what that one little fun AI art is, what that actually means in terms of how much, electricity is used, how much pollution that puts into the air, how much water it uses. I think that it's about creating those visuals for people so that people understand that it's not, as simple as I'm creating this thing, it lives in the cloud somewhere, but putting it to the faces of communities. We're doing a lot of work in, Memphis and in Mississippi. There are now potentially up to 3 data centers that are being built by, by Elon Musk XAI, that data center there. They're using methane gas turbines, potentially up to 41 at just one site, in addition to the diesel backup generators that are being used in order to power these data centers. And so we have to connect those dots. To your point, our website, our Stop Dirty Data website, our webpage has some of those one-pagers so that people, can talk about some of these issues without necessarily needing to go into all the details. But I think just having that high-level understanding of its air pollution, it's water contamination in addition to the resources, it's noise pollution, it's energy in the grid, it's affordability. There are so many issues that are wrapped up into these conversations that I think that, just having those resources and sharing them out can help us to broaden what's actually happening on the ground.
And what's so important about you making that connection between all of these areas that we're going to either see increases in terms of the cost or decreases in terms of the safety or availability of resources. At the end of the day, because it's our environment, because it's essentially our house, nobody that lives there is going to get a pass. Not even, and this is the crazy thing, not even the people that are in the 1 percentile of income and wealth in the country are going to get a pass from this, because what are they going to do? Think they're going to live in a bubble because they have all this wealth? No. You got to go outside, or their children or their families. So that's where I think a lot of the opportunity is in this message is to get the folks that might be living near the Mississippi River and wondering why they're seeing these clog areas of the Mississippi River, as well as somebody living in downtown Atlanta or Chicago or Houston or Dallas or Miami, wondering why, the traffic in the cities has gotten so bad because the infrastructure is not there to handle this inordinate amount of people that are commuting. It's all of that. And I'm so proud and grateful to you for being on our show this morning to talk about how we all have to connect the dots in this conversation, Abre. We got to have you back. But before we let you go today, will you let our listeners know all over the country how they can find you, how they can get involved, and maybe one thing that they could do today, this week, to have an impact on the environment in a positive way?
Yeah. Well, I'm on Instagram and as well as on our NAACP page. You can follow both for more information. We also are working with the Solutions Project around Black Climate Week. So you can go to the Solutions Project page, NAACP page, my personal page on Instagram, or our websites to get more information about all of these issues. And I'd say one piece of advice is we're in the middle. We just started Black Climate Week. This is an opportunity for us to really be able to center the issues that for generations we've known that Black communities, that communities who have faced the majority of the pollution have been highlighting solutions, innovation for what next steps can look like. And that's what we think Black Climate Week is about. So my advice would be to get involved. You can sign up on the NAACP's page or the Solution Project page. And that's a concrete way for you to, as early as this week, to get involved and to do something that highlights why climate issues are important to you and to your community.
Abre Connor, Director of Environmental and Climate Justice. Thanks for being with us. We got to go. Thanks, guys, for being with us. Make sure you stay tuned for the Stephanie Miller Show. And remember, take a deep breath and make your life count. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hi, this is Pat Hines, candidate for Cook County Assessor. I've spent 30 years working in property tax assessments, serving taxpayers like you. We need a